has more than 11,000 towns. Most of them are just dots on a map, a servo, a pub, maybe a war memorial with 40 names carved into it. But there are 12 towns scattered across this country that locals do not talk about the same way they talk about the rest. Ask someone from the next town over and watch their face change. They will happily tell you where to fill up on fuel. They will not so happily tell you where not to stop after dark. Some of these towns emptied out because the ground itself turned against the people living on it. Some are still full of people, but something happened there that nobody has ever fully explained, and the town simply learned to live around the hole where the explanation should be. This is not a ghost story channel, and none of this is folklore dressed up as fact. Every place in this video is real, with a documented history, and a real reason locals still warn outsiders away. We are counting down 12 of the creepiest small towns in Australia, and by the end, you will understand exactly why the warning exists. What ties these places together is not a single cause. Some of them are poisoned by something buried, some are haunted by a documented string of deaths nobody can fully explain, and some are simply so far from help that the Outback itself became the danger. A few of these towns barely have a population left to warn you at all, and one of them is currently at the center of a mystery that has never been solved, with the person who could answer it still missing to this day. Before we get into the countdown, if strange corners of this country are the kind of thing you come back for, hit subscribe right now. It costs nothing. It takes 2 seconds. And it is the only reason a channel like this gets to keep digging up the towns the tourist boards never mention. Let's get into it. Number 12. Eucla, Western Australia. Eucla sits on the edge of the Nullarbor, right where South Australia becomes Western Australia, and for decades, it was the most important telegraph relay station in the country, the link that let messages jump between Adelaide and Perth. The old telegraph station still stands there, or what is left of it. The building is being slowly swallowed by a moving sand dune, one room at a time, walls disappearing under white sand that shifts with every strong wind off the coast. Locals will tell you the dune has already taken the roofline of what used to be the operator's quarters. Visitors who walk out to photograph it at dusk describe an odd stillness. No birds, no wind noise, just sand hissing against brick. Old telegraph workers used to write about the isolation, driving men half mad out here, wigs without another face. The station operated from 1877 until 1927, when wireless technology finally made it obsolete, and the buildings were left to the desert almost immediately after. Surveys, taken decades apart, show the dune advancing several meters a year in places, which means rooms that tourists photographed whole in the 1990s are gone entirely today. The town that grew around the station is mostly gone now, just the roadhouse and a scattering of houses, and the people who still live there will tell you not to go wandering the dune at night, because the sand shifts fast enough to bury a person who loses their footing in the dark. Number 11. Old Adaminaby, New South Wales. In the 1950s, engineers building the Snowy Mountains hydro scheme needed a valley to flood, and the town of Adaminaby happened to be sitting in it. Every building was either moved 8 kilometers to a new town site, or left standing as the water of Lake Yucumbene rose around it. For most of the year, the drowned town is completely invisible, sitting somewhere under 60 meters of cold mountain water. But during severe drought, when the lake drops low enough, the old town resurfaces. Foundations, fence lines, the stone footings of a church, even a section of the original road, all reappearing out of the mud like a photograph developing. Locals who remember the flooding as children still talk about walking those streets again, decades later, standing where their childhood bedroom used to be, now just a rectangle of cracked earth. Fishermen tell stories of hooking lines on submerged chimneys and rooftops far below the surface. During the millennium drought in the early 2000s, the lake dropped so low that visitors could walk entire blocks of the old town, reading street names off buried signposts and standing inside the outline of buildings that had not seen daylight in half a century. Some residents who were moved as children returned during that drought just to stand on the exact spot their old house once stood, describing the experience as walking through a memory that should not physically exist anymore. The current town of Adaminaby was built new, but everyone there knows the old one is still down there, waiting for the water to run out again. Number 10. Farina, South Australia. Farina was founded in 1878 on the promise that this stretch of the outback could grow wheat, which is what the name literally means. The wheat never came. What came instead was drought, heat that regularly passes 50 degrees, and a slow, brutal collapse that emptied the town by the 1960s. What remains today are crumbling stone ruins, an old hotel with no roof, and a cemetery with a section set aside entirely for infant graves. Dozens of them, children, who did not survive their first year in that climate. A volunteer group now spends part of each year restoring the underground bakery that once fed the railway workers, and visitors who camp near the ruins after dark describe a heaviness to the silence, broken only by wind through empty doorways. Farina reached a peak population of around 300 before the Exodus, and by the time the last resident left in the mid-1960s, the town had already been reduced to a handful of stone shells, with no roofs and no glass in the windows. The infant graves in the cemetery are not a footnote either. Entire family plots record 2, 3, sometimes 4 children lost within a few years of each other, a pattern locals attribute directly to the heat, the water quality, and the sheer distance to any doctor. Locals from nearby towns still call Farina a hard place, not haunted exactly, but somewhere the land itself seems to remember what it did to the people who tried to live there. Number 9. Silverton, New South Wales. Silverton once held a population of 3,000 people during the silver mining boom of the 1880s, with churches, hotels, and a school. Today, fewer than 50 people live there, and the town looks less like a functioning place and more like a stage set, which is exactly why film crews for Mad Max and dozens of other productions have used it as a post-apocalyptic backdrop. The old gaol is now a museum, and locals who work there will tell you about cell doors that have been found open in the morning despite being locked the night before. The wide, empty main street, lined with tin-roofed buildings and almost no traffic, has an atmosphere visitors consistently describe as unsettling in daylight, let alone after the sun drops behind the nearby hills. Residents joke about it to tourists, but they also genuinely warn people not to wander too far into the surrounding scrub alone, since the Outback silence here has swallowed more than one confident hiker who underestimated the distances. At its peak in the 1880s, Silverton had banks, breweries, and dozens of hotels, serving a booming silver mining population, and the speed of its collapse, once the mine shifted operations to nearby Broken Hill, still surprises people who compare old photographs to the empty street standing there today. Longtime residents talk about the strange feeling of living inside a place that the rest of the world only recognizes as a movie backdrop, a real home that strangers walk through looking for a fictional wasteland. Number 8. Inaminka, South Australia. This tiny settlement on Cooper Creek sits near the site where explorers Robert Burke and William Wills died of starvation in 1861 after narrowly missing a supply party by less than a day. The dig tree, carved with the message that could have saved them, still stands nearby, and it draws visitors who want to see the exact spot where one of Australia's most famous exploration disasters played out. Locals who run the pub and the handful of businesses in Inaminka will tell newcomers, plainly and without much drama, that this stretch of the Outback still kills people who do not respect it. Flash floods can turn Cooper Creek from a dry bed into a raging channel within hours, stranding travellers on what looked like solid ground only an hour earlier. Heat and distance have claimed travellers who broke down without telling anyone their route. Burke and Wills themselves are the clearest warning available. 2 experienced, well-funded explorers who still died within a day's walk of help simply because the Outback gave them no margin for a single mistake, and their remains were not properly recovered and identified for months after locals eventually found them. The town itself is small and welcoming, but everyone there treats the surrounding land the way you would treat a dangerous animal that is usually calm, with real caution underneath the friendliness. Number 7. Beechworth, Victoria. Beechworth is a beautiful gold rush town, all honey-coloured sandstone buildings and manicured gardens, which makes what happened inside its old asylum even harder to reconcile. The Beechworth Lunatic Asylum operated for over a century and at points held more than 1,000 patients, many committed for reasons that would never meet a modern diagnosis, and many who never left. The nearby Beechworth Gaol carried out multiple executions, and Ned Kelly himself was held there before his trial. Tour guides who now run ghost walks through both buildings don't need to invent much, since the documented history of neglect, overcrowding, and death is disturbing enough on its own. Locals speak about the asylum with a strange mix of pride in the restoration work and genuine discomfort about what the walls saw. Staff at the site have reported temperature drops in specific rooms and sounds with no obvious source. Details that get repeated so often around town that even skeptical residents tell visitors to be careful which corridors they wander into alone. Historical records from the asylum describe treatments that would be considered abuse by any modern standard, and the patient cemetery on the grounds holds more than 1,000 graves, many marked with nothing but a number, because the institution stopped recording names for burial purposes for long stretches of its operation. That detail alone, a graveyard full of numbers instead of names, is the one locals bring up first when explaining why the site unsettles them more than any reported noise or cold spot ever could. Number 6. Junee, New South Wales. Junee is a quiet railway town, but just outside it sits Monte Cristo Homestead, regularly ranked as the most haunted building in Australia. Built in the 1880s, the homestead saw a documented string of deaths on the property: a stable boy who burned to death, a maid who fell from a balcony, a caretaker's son shot by accident, and a woman who spent 23 years confined to a single room before dying there. The current owners have spent decades restoring the house and running tours, and they openly discuss the volume of unexplained reports from visitors, cold spots, disembodied voices, and photographs with anomalies nobody can explain. Paranormal investigation crews from around the world have filmed there, and the property's own visitor logbooks, kept for decades, contain thousands of entries describing footsteps on empty staircases, doors that will not stay shut, and a recurring cold patch in the room where the elderly woman spent more than 2 decades in isolation before her death. The current owners never set out to run a haunted attraction. They simply kept an honest record of what visitors reported, and the sheer consistency of the reports over so many years is what eventually built the reputation. Locals in Junee treat the homestead with a mix of civic pride and genuine unease, the kind of local landmark that gets pointed out to visitors with a lowered voice rather than a proud one. Number 5. Picton, New South Wales. Picton is frequently named the most haunted small town in the entire country, and it earns that reputation from an unusual concentration of documented tragedy in a small area. The old railway tunnel, sealed since the 1990s, was the site of a construction worker's death during its original build, and locals still avoid it after dark. The former Picton Hotel and an old butcher shop on the main street both carry well-documented histories of sudden death on the premises. Add a colonial-era cemetery with graves dating back to the 1840s, several unmarked, and you get a town where almost every second building has a story attached to it that residents will recite without much prompting. Paranormal tour groups run regular walks through the town, and shop owners along the main street have grown used to customers asking, half joking and half not, whether their particular building is one of the haunted ones. What makes Picton different from most reputedly haunted towns is the sheer geographic density of the reports. Most Australian towns might claim 1 or 2 notable sites, but Picton residents can point to a dozen buildings within a few blocks of each other, each with its own separately documented history of sudden or unexplained death, which is part of why researchers of the paranormal keep returning to study it specifically. Number 4. Woomera, South Australia. Woomera was built from nothing in the 1940s as a highly restricted rocket testing range, shared for decades between Australia and Britain, and much of what happened inside its fences was kept secret from the Australian public for years. The surrounding Woomera prohibited area is still the largest land-based weapons testing range on Earth, larger than England, and unexploded ordnance from decades of missile and rocket trials remains buried across the restricted zones. The town itself, built for a population that has long since shrunk from a peak of several thousand to a small fraction of that, still carries the atmosphere of a place designed for secrecy rather than community. Wide empty streets and rows of near-identical houses built for a workforce that mostly left decades ago once the major testing programs wound down. Locals who remain will tell you plainly which fences you don't cross, not because of ghosts, but because the ground itself can still detonate. For years, the town operated almost like a company settlement, with residents required to hold security clearance simply to live there, and stories persist among former workers of tests that produced results nobody outside the fence line was ever told about. Even today, getting anywhere near sections of the prohibited area requires formal permission, and defense personnel still occasionally clear unexploded remnants from tests conducted before many current locals were even born, a routine reminder that the ground beneath the town has never been fully declared safe. Number 3. Wittenoom, Western Australia. Wittenoom is the only town the Western Australian government has ever officially removed from maps and road signs, and it did so because the ground underneath is saturated with blue asbestos from the mine that operated there until 1966. Blue asbestos, crossodolite, is the most dangerous form known, and the mining and milling process scattered fibres across the entire town site, into the school playground, the football oval, even the material once used to surface local roads. Hundreds of former residents and workers have died of asbestos-related disease, and the death toll is still rising among people exposed decades ago. A handful of residents refused to leave even after the government cut off services and offered buyout after buyout. Warning signs on the approach roads tell visitors not to stop, not to breathe the dust, not to disturb the ground. What makes Wittenoom especially disturbing is that the mining company running the operation knew the health risks from internal medical reports as early as the 1940s and kept the mine running for another 2 decades regardless, meaning generations of workers and their families were exposed with full knowledge sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere the whole time. Locals from surrounding towns will tell you Wittenoom is not a ghost story. It is a crime scene that the desert has been left to slowly cover. Number 2. Maralinga, South Australia. Between 1956 and 1963, Britain detonated 7 nuclear weapons at Maralinga, on land that belonged to the Anangu people who were never properly consulted or evacuated before the tests began. Radioactive contamination spread far beyond the official test zones, and a controversial cleanup called Operation Brumby in the 1960s buried plutonium fragments in shallow pits that were later found to be inadequate. A more thorough remediation was completed in the early 2000s, and parts of the land have since been formally handed back to traditional owners, but sections remain restricted and Geiger counters still register readings in specific ground zero locations. Guided tours now exist, run with strict safety protocols, and the guides do not soften the history, forced displacement, suppressed health data, and a landscape still measurably marked by what happened there. Anangu families describe relatives who wandered through the fallout of early tests without any warning, some developing illnesses that were never formally connected to the testing in official compensation processes, a gap that traditional owners and their descendants have spent decades trying to close through inquiries and legal action. The black mist that some witnesses described drifting over their camps in the days after certain detonations has become one of the most contested and painful details in the entire history of British nuclear testing on Australian soil. Locals in the wider region still refer to Maralinga in hushed terms, less a town than a wound with a name. Number 1. Larima, Northern Territory. Larima has a population of about 11 people, and it earned its reputation the way small towns rarely do, through an unsolved disappearance that has never stopped generating theories. In December 2017, a resident named Paddy Moriarty walked out of the town's only pub with his dog, Kelly, and was never seen again. No body, no vehicle missing, no real trail. What followed was not a quiet investigation, but a public unraveling of a town's private feuds, rival business owners, decades-old grudges, and rumours involving everything from a buried body to a pet crocodile allegedly kept nearby that some locals half-joked could explain the disappearance entirely. Journalists and podcast crews descended on Larima for years afterward, and the remaining residents grew visibly weary of outsiders treating their home like a true crime theme park. The case remains officially open, and a coronial inquest held years later returned an open finding, unable to determine what actually happened to him. What kept the story alive was not just the disappearance itself, but everything it exposed. A town split almost evenly between 2 feuding families, competing tourist attractions built around a rumoured crocodile enclosure, and long-standing grudges that suddenly looked a lot more serious once a person vanished without a trace. Locals who still live there will talk to visitors, but ask about Paddy and watch how quickly the friendliness changes into something more guarded. 12 towns, 12 very different reasons, and one thing connecting all of them. The people who actually live nearby know something the map does not show you. Contamination that outlives the mine that caused it. Water that hides a town instead of drowning it for good. A silence in the Outback that has swallowed more than one confident traveller. And in Larima's case, a mystery that 11 people have had to carry every single day since 2017, whether they wanted to or not. If you drive through any of these places, you will probably find friendly locals, a decent pub, and nothing that looks obviously wrong. That is exactly why the warnings matter, because the danger in most of these towns was never something you could see coming. Not a sign posted at the town limit, not a visible crack in the road, just decades of quiet local knowledge passed from one resident to the next until it became something everybody simply knew without needing to say it out loud. Which of these 12 would you actually and honestly be willing to drive through after dark? And would you stop for fuel or just keep driving until the next town shows up on the map?